Before we move on to the concrete qualitative research methods or procedures for doing research, let us remind ourselves of the characteristics of qualitative research, features that make it different from quantitative research, and that Leslie Curry raised in her video on what is qualitative research in Learning Unit 1, and that Creswell discusses in his book in Chapter 9. When you plan your mini research exercise, you should keep these characteristics in mind. This slide gives an overview of the various characteristics that we will move into one by one. We say that qualitative research takes place in naturalistic settings. This means that we are studying phenomena in real-world situations as they unfold naturally. If we, for instance, study women's daily chores, we could do a participant observation study, taking part in and observing at the same time what women do during the day, like fetching water. We talk directly to people and we see them act within their own context. This is a non-manipulative and non-controlling strategy of research, which is very different from what is going on, for instance, in a randomized controlled trial where you have to randomize your study participants into different arms in order to make comparisons. Unlike a questionnaire-based study, where the questionnaire is the main instrument of research, it is the researcher herself or himself that is the main instrument in a qualitative study. Now, what does this mean? The researcher is very central, and the data are produced in the interaction between the researcher and the study participant. This is sometimes hard to grasp, especially if you come from a quantitative tradition where the researcher holds a distance role in the data collection. It also means that the researcher's personal experience and insights are important to the inquiry. And this has implications for the study strategy. We say that a qualitative research is primarily inductive. Look upon research as a discovery process. You don't define everything beforehand. You're exploring a phenomenon with open questions so that you discover particular issues as you go along. You should expect the unexpected. It's not a testing of theoretically derived hypotheses, which would be a deductive design, but rather going out to explore a phenomena with an open mind. Closely related to the inductive approach, the qualitative researcher aims to learn from the study participants, to understand their perspectives and experiences, and the meanings that they attach to particular phenomena, like, for instance, birth care and the preference for giving birth at home. Thick description is a concept from Clifford Geertz, an anthropologist, which emphasizes the importance of an in-depth inquiry. A study needs detailed accounts, and what we use for these detailed accounts can be direct cases that are descriptions of a particular event or a particular life course or a particular disease or the like, or illness experience, or it could be quotations capturing people's personal perspectives and experiences, and importantly, putting them into context as we described in an earlier slide. Qualitative researchers try to develop a complex picture of the issue of study. We're talking about holistic accounts. Although purely holistic accounts are impossible, we cannot document everything. But we try to report multiple perspectives of a particular phenomenon. For example, by using different study participants or by using different methods. We try to sketch the larger picture that emerges of a particular phenomenon. We're looking for patterns. Qualitative data does not make much sense unless they are placed in their historical and temporal context. It could be the social, economic, and political context, or it could be the health systems context or the local community context. This is why generalizations in statistical terms is difficult from qualitative data. Even so, the findings may be highly relevant in other contexts, but that is not given. A very important aspect of qualitative design, which also makes it very different from the quantitative design, is flexibility. We say that the design is emergent. It changes, it can be changed as you go along and do your research. And in fact, it is expected that it changes when your plan is confronted with the reality of everyday life. It's as such a flexible and non-linear research process. The initial plan for research can never be tightly prescribed. Some or all phases of the process may change as the researcher enters the field and starts his research. It may involve the research question, the interview questions, the data collection methods, or even the study participants. As you go along, you may discover that you need to include, for example, the managers of the hospital where you do your study. You can do that if you acquire the necessary ethical permit to add another group of participants. There is a continuous interaction between data collection and analysis. We previously talked about the researcher being the main instrument of the research. This implies that the researcher holds a central role in the production of the data. Hence, the researcher needs to be conscious about his or her role. We say that reflexivity is a key criteria in the research process, and this means that we need to make our own normative or theoretical positions explicit. For instance, if you may enter a study on traditional medicine believing that traditional medicine is harmful. That should be made explicit, since that attitude will cover your lens. Or you're a feminist doing a study on gender roles. Your position as a feminist should be made explicit, since it will cover the lens with which you see the world. In qualitative research, this is not negative. Although qualitative research covers a whole range of approaches, the features that we have mentioned here are characteristics to all qualitative research and distinguishes it from quantitative research. Try to keep these in mind when you design your research projects.